Well, I absolutely agree, and we need to do it quickly. That's one of the things that we know that Congress, a lot of the conversations around one bill, two bills, when does it get done, what are the deadlines, is to give some assurance back to the markets that these tax cuts are going to be extended. And I think the markets are building that in. Of course, a lot of the economy is depending on the extension of those tax cuts. We know that also the government brought in more revenue than they have ever brought in under those tax cuts. So Secretary Yellen's comments yesterday were absolutely ridiculous. And I think that's what we're seeing across the board with Democrats. They're freaking out, for lack of a better term. But Congress, I think, is very focused on extending the tax cuts and doing it quickly and giving that assurance to the American people.
Yeah, so Scott Bessent will be important today. Yesterday, John Ratcliffe, also on the Hill, he talked about truth, and he has been a truth teller. Here's John Ratcliffe as he spoke with the senators for his confirmation to run the CIA.
And tax receipts are at an all-time high, despite the fact that tax rates are lower. Isn't that weird?
Unbelievable. It's so weird, but thank the Lord that Monday's coming.
Yeah. Biden's farewell address was so disappointing. He could have been magnanimous. He was so divisive and so negative, and this is why Trump is more popular than ever. Trump is being rewarded for his transparency, for celebrating the successes of people like Elon Musk. He's giving press conferences nearly every day, talking to the people, answering questions by the press. And so I think that it's giving Americans who voted against Biden, not for Trump, even more confidence in what a Trump presidency is going to look like, and it's making them feel more positive about where we're going as a country.
I mean, look at all of these bold ideas from Trump, and he hasn't even gotten in office, right? The External Revenue Service, Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico, looking at Greenland, looking at the Panama Canal to try to stop China from dominating. These are all real issues.
President Trump takes action and he gets things done. Now, in Biden's farewell speech, one of the things he said, he took responsibility for the deal between Israel and Hamas. Let's assume for a second the Biden team was the architect of that deal.
And they were.
It didn't get done until the home builder came and actually built the house.
Yeah.
You bring in the muscle. It took one meeting with Trump's team for that house to be built off of Biden's architectural plans. So let's be honest, Biden and his team, maybe they could draft up some plans, some of them not good at all, some of them very bad, but they never could get anything valuable done for the country.
Yeah, and let's not also forget how Joe Biden and the Democrats tried to sway the Israelis into how to deal with this. They kept saying, stop the fighting, don't go into Rafah. Well, by the way, when they actually had big wins, they found those terrorists in Rafah.
And interestingly enough, Netanyahu gave credit to Trump for this deal, by the way.
Netanyahu did.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so did the State Department. Look, I agree. President Biden did, write, or his team did write an architecture of this deal. But it wasn't until President Trump said all hell will break loose and all hell will pay if those hostages are not released before I step into office.
Well, I think that was really wise. What we just heard is he created the urgency that made this happen. Joe Biden said he wanted this to happen. He worked on the details forever, but he created no urgency. There was no threat. The rest of the world fears and reveres Donald Trump. It's going to restore our standing in the world. And when you look at people and how hopeful they are about foreign policy under Donald Trump, the polling is huge. It's not just the 50% approval rating. He gets much higher when you start talking about foreign policy, when you start talking about the economy, when you start talking about immigration. These issues are really important to the American people, and he will get the credit for this at the end of the day. Joe Biden has had a year. It didn't happen. And he can get credit for for trying. But at the end of the day, the urgency happened in the last week.
And not only that, but the Biden administration has been appeasing Iran, enabling them to generate billions of dollars and then use that money for proxies. That's what they did when ignoring the sanctions.
Results matter. We know that Trump led with peace through strength as president. None of this would have happened if Trump was still president during that time, although I am very hopeful of a new Trump administration. I think he is the most prepared president that we have ever seen in many generations because of all the work that has been done over the last 4 years and the comparison that the rest of the world and Americans have seen between Biden and Trump. People are waiting for that peace through strength to return, and the Middle East is fearful of a Trump presidency. quickly, and that's why it's getting done now. That's why it's getting done right before Trump takes over his administration on Monday. And we're all looking forward to peace in the Middle East during that Trump administration.
Well, the Democrats are also fearful of a Trump administration because they know he's coming into this the second time much more informed about what to expect. And he's got the support of global leaders, of domestic leaders, corporate America, individuals, and it does appear that he knows where the landmines are.
And he had 4 years to debrief internally on what he could have done better in his first term. And obviously, we're seeing right now he's making some substantial changes, and he's ready to come in and take action on day one.
Yeah,
super excited about it.
For sure. All right, quick break, and then Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is warning not to extend the Trump tax cuts, even as a new study shows American jobs are at risk if those tax cuts expire. Of course, the markets are going to be watching very closely. I would expect this is going to be a very friendly commentary because he's going to communicate all of President Trump's policies.
I would expect this one to be one of the easier ones.
Yeah.
It seems to me to make sense, and I think it's the right thing for the country. And I think that any combativeness in this one is going to be seen negatively. I think all of these sort of badgering kinds of testimony, I think don't do anything to help the Democrats. I think it only helps the Republicans and Donald Trump's
Well, they've
agenda.
put on a real show this week, haven't they?
They have, but as we just saw, our nominees really performed well. Pete Hegseth, and then, of course, Pam Bondi, who's from my home state of Florida, 8 years with Governor Rick Scott. She was Attorney General. The first time I met her, she was speaking on the back of a pickup truck on the side of the road in Naples when she was campaigning. But she did it with such poise. There's no question that these nominees, including Scott Bassett, are extremely qualified, well-spoken, confident, and President Trump's policies are not a secret. They are defending what the American people voted for. And so they're not bringing out new information. And it is such stark contrast to those who are heading those agencies now. I think this is actually doing us a favor to expose the American people to the quality of these candidates.
A couple of lines from his confirmation hearing statement, which we will hear later on today, which I have here. I was born and raised in South Carolina, low country. My father fell into extreme financial difficulty when I was young. He says, my life has been the only in America story that I'm determined to preserve. Today, I believe that President Trump has a generational opportunity to unleash a new economic golden age that will create more jobs. We must secure supply chains that are vulnerable to strategic competitors. We must carefully deploy sanctions as part of a whole of government approach to address our national security requirements. And critically, we must ensure that the U.S. dollar remains the world's reserve currency. All from Scott Bessett's confirmation initial statement before the questions.
Which is awesome. And what I'll say about the Senate Democrats in these confirmation hearings so far, the biggest win they have so far is none of them have to take their Ozempic shots this week because the Trump nominees are eating their lunch day after day after day.
Well played.
Now, Scott Besson in particular, this guy, he's going to be the smartest guy in the room. Good luck trying to stump him with your who won the 2020 election, right? I mean, you can't keep rolling out.
I bet you they ask him about George Soros.
Maybe they will.
He was the chief investment officer for Soros Fund Management.
And there's certainly some concern about that, right? I mean, Soros.
I've asked him about that, actually, on this program.
And his comment was.
And he basically said at that time we were talking business and currencies. It was when Soros made the big bet on the British pound.
Yeah.
And he said it wasn't in any political vein in any way.
And he's so smart, so calculated, so methodical. He's not a gunslinger. You know, like he is a very calculated individual who accumulated his wealth trading currencies. So who better to be in charge of the U.S. dollar than a guy who realized all of his success doing exactly that?
Mm-hmm. We're just getting started on all of this, but we also have Doug Burgum, and that's going to be important because this is another one of Trump priorities, and that is tapping into the energy space. And Lee Zeldin, who's going to roll back all of these climate change regulations, and that's why he was put in that place for the EPA.
Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, there you go. All right, quick break, and then we're staying on the Senate confirmation hearings now fully underway. Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn is here, and many of the hearings in the past 2 days. She's going to tell us more on the other side of this break. Don't miss it. You're watching Mornings with Maria, live on Fox Business. And call this. He called this as well. He told Gavin Newsom years ago in 2018, we have him on tape, saying you need to manage these forests.
There's always a tweet, and thank goodness for President Trump and the things that he knows about such a variety of issues. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised anymore. He's so well read. He hardly ever sleeps. He knows about all of these things. But it's very well known across the country, even in states like my home state of Florida, land management is incredibly important. Prescribed burns are incredibly important. If you manage things correctly and you're not distracted by DEI and other time-wasting activities, there is not just an impact on the culture when you're going anti-merit with DEI policies. There's a distraction taking place, and you're not taking care of the primary things, which is keeping your citizens safe and keeping their homes safe and their businesses safe.
Well, Larry, it's hard to talk about aid for California and include ideas like, well, there has to be conditions and, well, there's going to be limitations to how much you get because of these policy failures. But how else do you change the scenario, Larry, without promises that the policies will change? Everyone, all the lawmakers I've spoken with say, yeah, sure, we are going to agree on aid, but we need to have policy commitment of change.
Well, I agree with all of that, but good luck in changing Gavin Newsom. Good luck in changing Karen Bass. They're blaming all of this on climate change. In fact, what Gavin Newsom called it was a climate dam emergency, not a damn climate emergency, a climate dam emergency. So they think that they've done fine. They're perfectly okay with all the aid to illegal aliens. They're perfectly okay with setting up a panel to recommend reparations for black descendants of slaves, even though California was not a slave state. They're perfectly okay mandating ethnic studies for everybody who graduates from high school. They're perfectly okay mandating if you're a large toy retailer, you must have a gender-neutral aisle in your toy store. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is what these guys are all about. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Larry Elder. Stay with us. We'll be right back.